What's going on, baseball fans? Welcome to episode 2 of This Week in Baseball, presented to you by Diamond Digest. This is your host, Jordan Lazowski, and joining me is Ilan, Callie Tsai, and Scott Bentley for episode 2 once again. How's everyone doing today?
Good.
Fantastic.
I'm feeling really happy today.
Happy to be here, honestly.
Good vibes
Same.
on a Sunday. Good to hear, as always. We got an 8-game winning streak fan here. We got an 11-3 fan here, and we've got, a Tigers fan. So
I don't know what I'd call it either, honestly. I have no clue.
They're having fun for now.
They're having
We'll find
fun.
out how it stays. But
Having fun.
happy to be back with all you for episode 2. Callie, welcome back, and
Thank you.
we are ready to roll. We got another full packed schedule. We got a lot to talk about. Some surprise contenders, maybe some pretenders in there. We've got some hot starts, and we've got some Sunday night baseball to talk about in a little bit too. But let's start it off, as we will with every episode, with the current standings. If the season ended today, because any day it possibly could.
Yeah.
The 8 teams in the NL would be the Colorado Rockies,
Hey.
the Miami Marlins, the Chicago Cubs, the Los Angeles Dodgers, the Atlanta Braves, the Cincinnati Reds, the San Diego Padres, and the Philadelphia Phillies. And in the AL, the Oakland Athletics, New York Yankees, Minnesota Twins, Detroit Tigers, Baltimore Orioles, Houston Astros, Cleveland Indians, and rounding it out, the Chicago White Sox. So again, 4 AL Central teams, and only 3 NL West teams this week instead of 4.
All
The
4
Giants.
of our teams are in it,
All 4 of the AL Central teams are currently in it.
and all 4 of our teams on here are in it.
And all 4 of our teams indeed are in it.
Look at that.
So it's
Who
a good
would've thought?
episode for everybody. Look at
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, we're all happy.
Everyone now I understand why everyone's in a good mood. But we'll get to some of the contenders and pretenders in that in a little bit. But let's get to some more news. Obviously, last time we talked, the Marlins were the big talk of the town when it came to the lack of handling of the COVID crisis that we are all facing. This week, our topic of conversation is now the Cardinals. They had their series against the Tigers canceled, their series against the Cubs this week canceled, and we're not sure what it's looking like after this week. They've got one series before the White Sox was supposed to be the Field of Dreams game this coming week. They canceled it due to what was stated as logistical issues. If you ask a White Sox fan, he might have different opinions on what the logistics issues might be. Maybe it's the COVID issue rather. But I guess the good news is, guys, that, we're on a podcast now, and it was one team, maybe 2 teams, because the Marlins were still kind of a conversation piece, the Cardinals were still kind of a conversation piece last week. But this week we're not having a conversation. The Marlins are back on the field, like that's a good thing. But the Cardinals are still a pretty big question mark.
Yeah. We went from 4 teams being in question to just 2, which is a major improvement, but it's still not ideal that games are having to be postponed. The 60 games in 66 days was already a tight stretch. A tight fit. So compacting that into even fewer days is very worrying. We already have pitchers getting injured. We'll get to some more of that later. This might increase the chances of injuries. We're also seeing players going to the emergency room for their COVID. Fortunately, nobody was hospitalized, but it's still scary because these are athletes in the best shape of their lives, better shape than 9% of the population will ever be, and they're still getting hit hard by it. So, sobering way to remind us how serious this all is.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, you look at it and you say, oh, is it really more than just one team affected? But at the same time, Cardinals are playing someone every week. So someone's got to stop every week. And someone's got to try and revamp up every week. And I think this kind of goes to what you were talking about, Callie, is that increases the chances for another injury. that increases not only the Cardinals' chances for injuries and ramping back up, but the Tigers and the Cubs. Now you're affecting more and more teams trying to just shut down baseball and then restart it up again. I think that it's not going to be something that, if one team has this outbreak and they're not going to stop the league. We've already seen it's going to take a lot based on what we've already gone through.
The effect of a team outbreak isn't just confined to that team.
Right, absolutely. And I think that's one thing a lot of people I don't necessarily think keep in mind is, with the 2.5 week start to the season, the 2.5 weeks to ramp up before the start of the season, and now you got to stop a couple weeks in, you're not doing any team any favors. I mean, we're going to talk about the injuries right after this, but injuries continue to be a problem across the league, and you're starting to see teams kind of adjust to that too. I know, speaking from the White Sox perspective, Dane Dunning's an interesting name. A lot of people want to talk about, and especially White Sox fans, especially with a team that has had starting pitching injuries this year. Well, he's a guy coming off of Tommy John. Now, do they not want to rush him and put him into games? It's these are all things teams have to start keeping in consideration. This is not, again, this is not something that's just being held down to whichever team is getting COVID.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we were kind of talking about it off air beforehand, but the biggest ramification for the Tigers' perspective, at least, has been our top organizational prospect was, by all accounts, supposed to make his major league debut either the day before the Cardinals series or during the Cardinals series this week. And now he's still on the taxi squad and not even on the major league roster. It's like you said, you said it extremely well. The ramifications aren't just contained to the Cardinals. Now we're, as fans, we are now, stuck waiting, I guess I would say, for Mize to get called up. And for him personally, he's done everything right. He has dominated every level. He stayed relatively healthy. He stayed totally healthy this year. He hasn't complained in the media, but he's handled everything. He's done everything exactly right. And now, because of just how weird this season is, he's put back on the back burner. And now, his service time and all that is now directly affected because of that.
I think for the Rockies' perspective, the Cardinals were a pretty decent team. We can talk about their offensive depth, we can talk about all that stuff, but they were going to play a pivotal role in the end of the season. And they could have helped the Rockies sneak into a playoff spot. You think about playing Milwaukee, playing the Cubs, you play these Cincinnati, you play these teams that are really good. The Cardinals take those teams on, and having that presence be lost or having that be impacted, those are valuable games they could have won and helped out these teams advance to the playoffs. So I think it's a real oversight in Major League Baseball. And we've seen it last week, we see it this week with the way they handle this stuff. And I think players are getting more upset about it. You see that people are responding more on social media. Last night, Adam Wainwright posted about how there are constant leaks about this and how he got very upset by it. So you see there's a sort of tension rising even with the players now. And it's concerning because how is it going to impact us next season and the season after that and going on? How is it going to affect the outlook of baseball in the long term?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, how did you entreat your employees now? And
Right.
When it comes time to have conversations in a year from now, how are they going to look back at this? And I think that's an interesting point. You've talked about it, Ilan, and I think it's something we bring up a lot ourselves, and even on this podcast last week, is how things are coming through the media. And how, pick your favorite national baseball writer, is saying something, and now the players are finding out through them. That's no way. That's a real good way to piss people off.
Real quick. Too.
And that's a real good way to have some ill will built up heading into arguably one of the most important collective bargaining agreements in a year from now.
Yeah.
And it's frustrating to see that, and it's all in this picture of the COVID landscape, how you're treating the players now is how they're going to react in a year from now, because they're going to remember this. I don't think, and I think a lot of fans try and say, well, what happened with the negotiations leading up and what happens during the season isn't going to affect 2021. I don't think that's true. I think these are human beings we're talking about here. Each incident isn't an isolated one. Because if you try and isolate it, you're forgetting about the fact, like what I'm saying, is they're humans. They're not just going to forget these feelings. But
the upcoming CBA discussion and renewal was already one of the most important and one of the most explosive in a long time. And this COVID situation is just kindling and gasoline for that fire.
Absolutely. And I think looking at it, I have an interesting perspective, being that like my team is horrible and we have only prospects really to look forward to. So like the biggest thing that's very apparent for me personally is I see no scenario, especially after this season, after a week, like your service time is waived for a year. The whole, like, we're going to wait and play with service time and wait until this date, like the Chris Bryants and all that of the world that get called up right after that. I think I see no scenario where the players are going to let that stay in for the next one. And I think that on top of that, I think it's going to be really hard to convince owners that that's something that can be taken out. And it's hard with a sport with no salary cap. That's one of the ways they try to help teams with smaller budgets, and which honestly all four of our teams kind of are. And that's just I don't know. I think that it was already going to be a big deal, and now after this season, I mean, I know it's a shortened season, but it was a week. Like you keep, like Joe Adele, we're going to talk about at some point, like gets called up. He missed like the first 10 calendar days of the season, and now he just gets a whole year of service time waive. Like, I think that, for me personally, I see that as probably the biggest.
And we've momentarily lost Scott.
Oh, no.
Oh, the joys of podcasting over Zoom and Skype and the internet. But we'll figure out where he went and we'll come back to him. But, I mean, I think he was making the good point about the service time. It's a frustrating thing that, I think from my perspective too as well, I've had a team where, Nick Madrigal was a good case example until he got hurt. But, it was like 6 days, or would I prefer 6 days this year or 162 days 7 years from now to get him? Like, there's no owner in the world that's going to say, I prefer 6 games in 2020 than 162 in
2021.
In 2021, right. So I think that's the frustration part of it for a lot of fans. And I know for players too. But let's talk about the call-ups. Let's talk about, some of those people who, for their fan bases, for their front offices, they will be gaining an extra year of service time. Oh, look at Scott's
back. Yay.
Yeah, I decided to take a break after that.
Yeah.
I needed to cool off.
But we were just about to get into call-ups, so great timing on that.
Look at that. Beautiful.
Joe Adele of the Angels, Luis Patino of the Padres, Eddie Alvarez of the Marlins, which is a cool story, Ryan Castellani of the Rockies, and this is not a call-up, but a fun one, Pat Venditti of the Marlins. He is back and is a fun story once again in the league. So you're seeing a couple top prospects here in both Adele and Patino. Adele was at least top 5 on most major boards, if not higher than that.
Oh, yeah.
Luis Patino somewhere in the mid-20s, I believe, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep.
Eddie Alvarez, a real cool story. Former White Sox prospect, now with the Marlins. He was in the Olympics quite a few years back.
Won silver in
He's a
speed
medalist.
skating, I believe.
a speed skating medalist. And now he is playing for the Miami Marlins. It's a couple cool stories there. Ryan Castellani, I know, Ilan, you could probably talk a little bit more to him, but
Yep.
Pitching Ninja put out a cool graphic comparing his mechanics very similarly to Max Scherzer's.
Yeah,
But-
I think Castellani, he was very highly regarded within the Rockies community before he came up. He was a very exciting prospect. He might not have been the highest ranked. He was 14th, 15th usually in the prospect rankings, but he was still very exciting for those who watched him in minor leagues. And seeing him pitch last night against Seattle, even though it is Seattle, he pitched an amazing game. He didn't allow a hit in his 5 innings of work. And you see that as a Rockies fan, it's very hopeful seeing these young pitchers come up because the Rockies have never been known for developing pitching staffs. Never. And seeing this happen, in 2018 and now here again in 2020, you gain some hope that there's been a shift in the philosophy of development in the Rocky system. And you see that maybe there is a future ahead and maybe we can be a little relaxed about the pitching staff in Colorado. But of course, this was in Safeco. This was in T-Mobile Park. Oops, I keep forgetting that. This is in T-Mobile Park. This wasn't in, Coors Field. This wasn't in the offensive powerhouse stadium yet. So I always wait to see how they do at Coors Field before I really judge it. But so far, after last night's start, I'm really impressed and I'm really excited to see him pitch at Coors Field.
When was the last pitcher who really controlled Coors? Was it Kyle Freeland was good one year, but he really struggled in 2019. I think Ubaldo Jimenez was the last real great Rockies pitcher.
That was
De
the
La Rosa.
legend.
De La Rosa was decent, right?
Yeah, but Ubaldo Jimenez is always sort of the premier Coors pitcher. That
Yeah.
2009 season, he was stellar.
20
And
wins.
since then, we've just been comparing everyone to Ubaldo, which as hindsight tells us, it's kind of weird. It's still weird to call them one of the best Rockies pitchers when I think about 2016, 2017.
He's probably the best. I mean, he's probably the best pitcher in the history of your franchise, yeah?
I would say yes for now, but I am still going to stand by German Marquez eventually taking that place.
I don't mind that.
Yeah.
I really don't. I love Marquez. I don't mind that at all.
That's
I
the other
feel
side.
really bad for the Rockies pitching staff because they're very talented. I mean, if you take them out of Coors Field and put them in pretty much any other stadium, they would be very solid pitchers. It's just Coors is an untamable beast. Ubaldo Jimenez named pitchers excluded.
Yeah, I understand that. And I think they're really trying, and the team's trying to figure out a way to help them adapt better to Coors Field. And you see that this season they have so far, and I'll go into this later, they have tamed the beast to some extent. Even though it's only been one series at home, really one homestand, you see that when they played the Padres, besides one game, they had them under control.
Yeah.
The Padres' offense was stifled in Coors Field of every stadium in baseball. So there's very slight hope for those of us who wear purple right now.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the pitching staff is always the main focus for a team like the Rockies. I mean, for any younger team in general, when you're relying on those younger guys, it's get them up, get them their experience, and, kind of Scott's frustration with Casey Mize not coming up is get him up there, get some experience under your belt. It's figuring out how to pitch at the major league level. I don't think that's necessarily an easy thing by any means, even if you've experienced success in the minor leagues. And I think that's something we've all kind of talked about in its own little ways. And I mean, for any of these guys, Patino, Adele, just getting experience this year as a top prospect, as someone who, maybe even in Castellani's case, who's maybe not a top prospect, but someone who's been on the Rockies' radar.
Mm-hmm.
Getting that experience in a 60-game season is huge for rookies this season.
I
think
think
that,
considering how there isn't any minor leagues this year.
Right. And I think that's why, we talk about the call-ups and the years of service time, and it's a conversation we always come back to. We literally just had it. because it's such a prevalent conversation for so many teams as this shift has become to the youth in baseball. I think it's a good shift, but it's also figuring out how to manage it while at the same time recognizing that baseball is a business and knowing as a fan how to adjust to it. Like, we don't like how things happen and how things come about, but being able to understand it is another piece to it. It doesn't make it any less frustrating, but
Yeah, absolutely. And I think like you said, there's a lot of I mean, you guys kind of talked about it last week, but like GM speak is like super annoying. Like and it's kind of just salting the wound when you already know what's happening and then they blatantly lie about it. Like that. And like you said, it's one thing to be mad at it, but at least understand it is a whole nother thing. And I think and a team that's in my position when like, I mean, I could make a legitimate argument that maybe not this year's team after the additions of Crone and Scope, but last year's team, the 5 or 6 best players in the entire organization were all in the minor leagues. Like, that's a legitimate argument I could have made and probably won. And I think that's, for us as a fan, like, obviously I want to win. Like, I don't want to lose 114 games, like, obviously. And I think knowing it being so blatantly obvious that all of the best players on this team are not at the major league level is, while I totally understand the business side of it, it doesn't make it any less frustrating for sure.
Yeah. And I root for a team that just went through that. I've seen
absolutely.
it, and I've seen the frustration from fans. And I don't know if it makes me less frustrated that I know it's happening, but at the same time, it's not understandable. But I understand why it's happening.
Right.
It's still a frustration, and it's still going to happen. And again,
it's understandable, but it's not digestible.
Right. It's
almost like coming from Diamond Digest, something not being digestible is really that's something. That's what we do for a living. So
yeah. So on to Patino. He's one of the most interesting call-ups that will happen this year, I believe, simply because he hasn't pitched above high A. He's working out of the bullpen, which, like that Padres bullpen, needed more help.
Yeah.
What a bullpen.
I know.
Can't believe it.
But he's only 20 years old, I believe so. He's young. He's improved a lot since being signed. He went from throwing 85 to 95. He's got some really good off-speed stuff and adjusting to the major league level, getting familiar with that, with the catchers. Having Austin Hedges catch him is going to be super helpful for a youngster.
It's a blessing.
Getting used to all the pitching coaches, the new staff will be good for him. And just seeing how he does in bite-sized appearances will be nice.
Yeah, I think it's interesting to see how some teams are handling guys like Patino, where top rookie hasn't really pitched too high up in the minors, but what are they possibly learning out in their taxi squad? Yeah. What are you possibly learning that's more valuable than whatever you can learn on a major league ball field, even if you get lit up? Like,
yeah, who cares?
It's nothing that you're going to learn in those practice field games. And I think that's interesting how teams like the Padres, especially a competing team like the Padres, are handling it. You know, I'm not sure a rebuilding team is going to handle it the same way, because now you're looking at a team who now values the service time.
Can confirm they do not. Yeah.
I was just going to say, again, we still have someone who is quite frustrated with his team doing that exact same thing. But it's interesting to see how teams are handling it. And it'll be interesting to see how teams that are competing, and we'll get into this right now, are handling those young guys when it comes into injuries and replacing players, because we continue to have a lot of injuries around the league. And 3 main ones from this last week. Now, how's that for a transition?
I was just going to say
That's great.
That's a man transition. That's a big boy transition.
3 major ones from this week. Mike Soroka tears his Achilles in what was a pretty brutal injury to watch on television.
Very, yeah.
Michael Wacha, shoulder inflammation. And Giancarlo Stanton, I almost called him Mike Stanton, has a hamstring injury. So 3 varying degrees, shoulder inflammation lends itself to something greater than just inflammation, but we'll have to see what happens there. Stanton's hamstring, and Soroka, another major blow to the Braves, who, as Callie mentioned before we even got on, had to replace like 80% of their starting staff from 2019 to 2020, or excuse me, 60%, and now 80% upwards, where Max Fried is really your only consistent carryover from year to year.
Yeah, what an impressive – I mean, the fact that even with all this going on and they got Markakis, who wasn't going to play, and then now he's back. And, like, what an impressive – just to be in the, like, second place in the division, like, just to be there, like, an over 500 is honestly impressive as heck for them, just given the fact that they have – gotten the short end outside of the Cardinals and Marlins, have probably gotten the shortest end of the stick of any team in baseball up to this point. Like that's impressive and they even got like Acuna got off to a slow start. Albies is hurt now too. Like, I mean, they really are scraping the barrel there, and they're just winning games, man.
Yeah. Their offense is good, but it's going to have to be a lot better if they're going to. Well, I mean, with the expanded playoffs, I think you can confidently say that they will never be out of contention. But you're not as confident in them now as you were heading into this season. They're not a lock anymore, I would say.
I agree.
Yeah.
Because they're relying on a bunch of rookies, they're going to have to lean on their bullpen more, which with the additions of Will Smith, and they extended Melancon, didn't they?
Yes.
Their bullpen is a strength, but I do think that it will buckle under the larger workload and strain it's going to be put on now that so many starters are gone.
Just also, they're playing against teams that are deeper than them.
Right.
They're playing the AL East. They're playing Washington. They're playing the Yankees. They're playing Tampa Bay. They're playing these teams that are significantly deeper and have a healthy staff. So I would worry if I was a Braves fan just about how long can they keep this up before someone falls apart.
I think the division point is a great one. I mean, that's like not only have you gotten all these injuries and opt-outs and everything, now you're playing against the AL East, like on top of that. Like, obviously that's not ideal, I would say. That's probably not coming from a AL Central fan. Like, I guarantee you'd rather be here. Like, I mean, that's definitely a great point, and something that makes, again, them being over 500 currently even more impressive. It's all about just sustaining it at this point.
Mm-hmm.
Seasons like this test your depth, and it's a really interesting thing to see how teams handle things.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm interested to see how the Braves hold up. I think, you look at that team, you look at the offense, and you assume that would be enough to at least help them tread water for now. You're not getting
Acuna, Freeman, Alvarez, Markakis as well, now that he's back. Those are all good hitters. They have good offense, but I don't think it can overcome the detriment of the pitching staff.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. No, that's valid. I think that'll be one where that's pretty dependent on who you're playing too.
Yeah,
the Braves could get away with it if the Braves were playing the Central divisions this year.
Absolutely.
Yeah. But the Braves are absolutely going to be a team to watch to see if they sink or swim now.
Yeah. Now, I mean, you're sitting pretty at around 500. If you can tread water and stay around 500, it's still probably good enough to get yourself into these expanded playoffs. That's what it comes down to. Can you get off to a decent enough start to where if you start sustaining these injuries, can you stay and tread water long enough that you end up 500? I don't think it'll be an issue for Stanton with the Yankees. I don't think they're going to have a problem with that anytime soon. Michael Wacha, I think there's
Pretty big blow to the Mets.
Yeah.
I mean, he was pitching well before his injury.
Yeah, I think that's someone where, the Mets have already lost Syndergaard.
They didn't need another blow.
Yeah.
They really didn't.
But, I mean, from their perspective, though, it'll be nice to have Stroman back in a couple weeks, though.
Yeah, but he's not going to be ready in time to take Wacha's place.
Yeah, so you got to do something until then. So
Maybe we see Seth Lugo starting.
Right.
Yeah.
That's an interesting name.
That's a good point.
My fantasy team would like that, but I digress. No, that's an interesting point. Do you have – and the Dodgers are another good team that just with someone like Ross Stripling. Like, do you have someone that if you just need to step up, like for a game, do you have somebody? A lot of teams don't have that. Dodgers have an abundance of it. Yankees have an abundance of that.
They can just slot Luke Voigt into the DH spot.
Right.
Yeah.
Like
you just need is huge.
You just need that one guy on your team, and so few teams have it, that on let's just say at least 50 to 75% of the other teams in the league, this player would be a starter. And it's Seth Lugo for the Mets. He would be in most team starting rotations. At least get him a chance.
He would be our ace. I mean,
he would be the
literally be my ace. Like literally.
Like Ross Stripling with the Dodgers is a great example. Luke Voigt with the Yankees. Someone who, if you were to place him on a different team, he'd probably be starting.
Yeah.
And that's how you get your real test of depth. There's depth, and then there's like legitimate depth. And that's where you're going to see teams maybe like the Braves who don't have that legitimate depth, but they have some sort of depth, kind of tread water, versus the Yankees will be like, oh, darn, we got to hit Luke Voigt a little bit more this season.
The Astros were that team last year. It's going to be the Dodgers and Yankees this year.
Absolutely.
And you're seeing even now the Astros who are off to a rough start, losing Verlander. They already lost
Springer.
They lost Springer. It's not that same depth team that it was before.
Yeah. And
I mean,
that might be why they're slipping.
Yeah.
Their bullpen is proof of that too. I mean, some of these guys that are coming out of the pen for them haven't never pitched past Double A. I mean, one of the dudes' names is literally Scrub. Like that's they're really scraping the bottom of the barrel for their bullpen help specifically, but just really they're pitching all around, and that on top of all their best hitters batting under 200 is not a recipe for success. Clearly,
leaves the AL West a little wide open, but
yeah, well, not if the A's just keep running away with it.
Let's talk about the A's a little bit. I'm sure they'll come up as we talk about this next part with. We're going to do a little contenders-pretenders debate. We've got a couple weeks' worth of conversation here. The A's aren't on this list. They're definitely a contender. But, you got to talk about the AL West a little bit in these next couple conversations here. We'll start with Ilan's Rockies. We'll go around.
Yeah.
We'll start with everyone can tell whether or not they think they're contenders and pretenders or pretenders. And then we'll have a little discussion about a couple of these teams. So, like I said, we'll start with the Rockies. I won't start with Ilan because I know what his answer is. We'll start with Scott. What is your answer?
I find my definition of contender and pretender probably changed this season.
Sure, that's valid.
Given the fact that the top two in each division are just guaranteed in. That being said, I'm still going pretender. But I thought about it a lot more than I would have in a normal year, especially, in a full season, I would look at starts like the Tigers and the Rockies and go, okay, they'll flatten out, just give it a couple of weeks. But now a couple of weeks is the end of the season. Yeah. So there's I would say I still want to lean pretender, but I have no problem against anyone who would say contender.
The Rockies are interesting. If you're just going off of are they going to make the playoffs, I say yes, just due to the fact that an 11-3 start is incredibly good, and they're going to have to go on quite the skid to drop out of that place. That being said, do they win the NL West? I do not think that happens. Do they even come second in the NL West? That is another thing I think is questionable. But they do have a good bullpen, which is surprising. That's been their weakness over the past few years. Well, a weakness. But the last I checked, they had like a bullpen ERA of around 4, and Wade Davis, he's struggling. If you take him out, it gets even better.
Yeah.
Got a really good offense. Charlie Blackmon is raking. They could do it. Who knows? They're definitely making the playoffs. And I would not be surprised if they take that second spot in the NL West.
The NL West is tough too. I mean, I'm obviously I'll let you guys say your piece too, but like the NL West is not a joke. I mean, you got the last place team in that division, I think, is the Diamondbacks, who are only a couple under 500 and have looked great. So like that's the other thing the Rockies, I would say have going against them is the fact that they the AL West even record may not be great, but that's not a joke either. And the NL West is incredibly tough at the moment too, which it definitely doesn't help.
With their start, all they really need to do is hover around 500.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's probably fair.
All right, Ilan, tell us why the Rockies are contenders.
So I took some notes on this before we started recording. So there are a few things that stood out to me. So in 2019, the pitching staff had a 7.8 barrel percentage. This season, it's only at 3.7%. So you see a massive drop off in the barrels they're allowing.
Yeah.
Huge difference, yeah.
And then same thing with home runs for 9 innings. It was 1.69 in 2019. They were the second worst team in baseball for this.
Nice.
And now they're second best team in baseball with 0.79 home run 9. So you see just a change in the pitching staff, as well as the offense. People talk about pitching all the time for the Rockies, but honestly, in my opinion, the worst part last season was the offense. I feel like the offense completely went off the rails, especially in July. After July, the team sort of fell apart, and the offense was a very big part of that. This season, they have the third highest WOBA in Major League Baseball. And while their weighted runs created plus isn't exactly the best, it's 102, so it's average. It's still a significant increase from 86 in 2019. So I am pretty impressed with the Rockies so far. I'm going to call them a contender, but I will also understand the fact that this is the Rockies. The Rockies have different scenarios in every between baseball. I am still very worried about the Coors Field hangover, especially later on in the season when it becomes more prevalent. I am worried about the depth sustaining itself. So far, they've gotten remarkable production from very young players and very inexperienced players. So I'm not sure if later on in the season they learn these pitchers better. Hopefully they don't, but I am going to say contender, and I'm going to say that I am beyond impressed with the bullpen. Carlos Estevez is impressive. Yency Almonte is impressive. There's just these players who most people don't even talk about, who I never heard of before, just coming out for the Rockies and pitching incredible baseball to incredible teams, which is fun. I'm trying to have fun with the season. Having fun seeing this team outperform myself and everyone's expectations, having fun seeing this team hit home runs again and hit runs again. It's fun. This baseball's supposed to be. Baseball's supposed to be fun. This team's been fun so far.
Yeah.
Everyone likes to see their team compete. I can't argue with that. Next two. I don't think we'll be spending as much time on these two. Sorry, Scott. Miami Marlins, Detroit Tigers. Contenders, pretenders. Any strong opinions coming from?
I want to go all in on the meme and say the Marlins are contenders, but I can't. I think that they will be caught by the Nationals, the Mets, the Braves, the Yankees, the Rays. I think that those teams will slow them down. I mean, they just lost their winning streak to the Mets.
Yeah.
I think that they cannot sustain this, especially with how much they're calling up minor league players who wouldn't be in the major leagues in any other scenario.
Right. I mean, that's an important piece of it too, where
I mean,
a lot of these guys, yeah,
even if the team gets healthy, who do they have who's consistently good hitter on that team? Brian Anderson, Jesus Aguilar,
right.
Isan Diaz. I think that's it.
Didn't Isan Diaz opt out?
He did, I think.
Yeah.
He did. Yeah, he did.
So, I mean, you're seeing less guys than they had last year.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I think the Marlins have a rough stretch of baseball ahead as well. They're playing a lot with the Nationals, a lot with the Mets, a lot with the Braves, and even the Rays at the end of the month. So you're going to see that I'm expecting in that sort of stretch of the schedule at the Marlins falter, because this is the team that currently has a speed skater on their roster. Sounds more like a hockey player than does a baseball player.
Starting.
So how can we really say that the Marlins are competitive at this point? It just feels like one of those weird 2020 moments, and I don't feel like it's going to last. I don't feel like maybe in the Central, maybe, but not in the East. Not in the East.
Scott's like, I'm intrigued. You think the Tigers might be contenders?
Yeah, no, I mean, let's talk about it. I mean, let's talk about it. So I will. Honestly, it's fascinating. I mean, even from putting my fandom aside, watching this team who was so bad last year actually play like extremely competitive baseball. The game is on right behind this computer too, so if I make a face or something, that's why. But it's I'll start with this. It's the AL Central. Okay,
Yeah.
it's the AL Central, and like that's not a cop out. Like the AL Central is bad. Like it's weak. I think the Twins are especially with their hot start, is probably a lock at the top. But outside of that, it's really a lot of unproven teams who haven't found their ground. The Indians' offense isn't good. The White Sox have been incredibly streaky.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to sit here and say that they're contenders. I think that would be ridiculous even for my standards, given how bad they were last year. But I'm also not going to put it, given the teams, their schedule, and given the teams they have to play, and the ability to, if they really wanted to, if they were in it in the back third of the season, if they're still in it, the ability to call up just a plethora of talent.
Yeah.
That being able to reach into your bag and grab that, if they can surprise some people, is something that, like we were talking about with depth, that like this is a bad team that somehow has incredible depth, which is weird, but that's the situation we're in. So I'm like I said, I'm not going to sit here and say that they're like contenders and going to make the playoffs or anything, but in an expanded postseason where your schedule is against the AL and NL Central, and I don't know. I mean, I'm not going to rule anything out. I'll put it that way.
Yeah.
Let's also not act like the Tigers didn't get upgrades this offseason.
Mhm.
They got Fulmer back. They got CJ Cron, who's a good hitter.
Yeah,
So
he's
they've
batting under
improved.
200 with an over 900 OPS right now.
The old Derek Petrick.
Yeah, I think there are improvements there that make it a team that, again, you're only playing the AL Central and the NL Central. It wouldn't be the world's greatest surprise if,
Right.
you look at a team you're playing 60 games, and a lot of people are worried, well, are the best 8 teams going to get in at 60 games? It's like, that's a team that could sneak in.
Mhm.
Yeah,
There were enough upgrades, and there's enough young talent that you can make a legitimate argument there.
Yeah,
But-
that's where I'm at too. I'm definite. Like, I mean, I watched all 114 of those losses last summer. Like, I'm not going to sit here and say that this team is drastically better now, but at the same time, we've already gotten off to a hot enough start to be
In the
second
picture,
place currently. So, like, that's obviously we're not in a position where we have to like go on a win streak to become relevant. Like, we're already in the thick of it, a fifth of the way through the season already. And I think the biggest thing for me is the ability to reach back and pull people up as well if they really wanted to make a run at it.
mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Which
I
they
agree.
won't, but we can dream.
Last team here, San Diego Padres. Contenders, pretenders.
Absolutely contenders. I think they have one of the best offenses in baseball, a very good pitching staff, and a strong bullpen. I'm going to get into a player who's helping power that offense later, but not including him. You have Tatis, you have Pham, you have Hosmer, who's coming back after getting the stomach inflammation. He's hitting the ball in the air, so he's getting better. Myers, another good hitter. No, they DFA'd Josh Allen, so not him. That's 4 very good hitters. Did I say Pham already?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So Pham, I included him.
It's a good offense. The
Yeah.
biggest thing for me is bullpen.
Mm-hmm.
Bullpen's
If you had a good bullpen this year, yeah.
in a shortened season, the ability to have that much, not only we sound like a broken record, keep talking about depth, but like not only do they have top end talent, like guys that they can go to whenever they want to shut somebody down, but they have insane bullpen depth. I mean, that bullpen is like 6 guys deep, like where you feel maybe even 7 guys deep, where you feel incredibly confident in whoever they're going to put out there. Like that's again, as someone who has watched some of the worst bullpens ever, that is an incredible luxury. Luxury.
I mean, I think some fans are less confident after the past few days, but it's still a good bullpen with an incredibly high talent level. I mean, you got Yates, you got Alvarez, you got the previously mentioned Patino, you have Stammen, you have you have Cal Quantrill. You have Matt Strand. That's 6 guys you can believe in that are good. Pretty sure I'm still missing somebody after all that.
Yeah, it's unreal.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, as a NL West fan, as much as I hate Padres Twitter and some of the Padres fans because of Matt Holliday and all that fun stuff, the team has proven itself to be not just a postseason contender, but a contender to go very deep in the playoffs because really of their bullpen. And I am impressed with the way they played this season. I feel like no matter how many games there were this season, they were going to impress us. And I'm excited. I'm excited for the Padres. As long as they don't beat the Rockies, they have to lose to the Rockies every single game. But besides that,
I think how good the bullpen is just distracting from how good the rotation is because Paddock, Lament, Davies, that's a very good 1-2-3 punch that I would be very comfortable with in a postseason scenario.
Yeah, and I will be a pro Garrett Richards guy until the day I die. People need to stop sleeping on how nasty he is. That dude has some of the best stuff in all of baseball and always has. And if he can just stay healthy, I mean that's an unreal 1 through 4 in a rotation. And especially again paired with that bullpen, the future is very bright in San Diego for sure.
Absolutely. Now, we've talked about some of the contenders, some of the good teams. There are 3 teams here that, when you think about teams that are probably going to be in the conversation for the playoffs, especially the expanded playoffs, for these 3 teams to be struggling like they are and not in the picture, as well as one player in particular who's having a rough start this season. I'm just going to list these off. You guys tell me in here, are there any worries you have, or you look at this and say, hey, maybe they're not as good as we thought they were. I'm sure you won't say this about the player, but you might say this about the teams. The player is Christian Yelich, has got off to a pretty historically bad start. 3 teams, the Angels, currently sitting in 4th place in the AL West at 5-10. The Diamondbacks, a team that went out and loaded up, got Madison Bumgarner in the offseason. 6-9, last place in the NL West, a very difficult NL West. And the World Series champion Washington Nationals, obviously without Juan Soto for a little bit. 4-7, last place in the NL East. Do any of these teams worry you? Do you look at Yelich and say, maybe this is going to be a year-long thing? Or is this like, hey, you're 10, 15 games in, you still need a little bit more to see things? Thoughts on any of these teams or Yelich?
The Angels, I think they're better than 5-10, but I don't think they're a playoff team. Their pitching has been surprisingly good. Dylan Bundy, their starting pitching has been surprisingly good.
Yes.
Dylan Bundy, Andrew Heaney, and I'm forgetting somebody else. Matt Tahiran. I'll remember him later. But their starting pitching has
I think
been
Griffin
good.
Canning's one too.
Oh yeah, that's him. Their starting pitching has been shockingly good, but I don't think that can make up for the lack of depth in the lineup and how bad the bullpen has been. I think they have one of the worst back end lineups there is. They have Pujols, obviously, who you can rely on for a few dingers, but he is not gonna drive in 100 runs, obviously, and he's not gonna have a 120 WRC plus season. Brian Goodwin is good in neither the field nor the plate. Their catchers, Max Sassy is fine. I mean, if you check our Twitter, you'll see how, but you don't have high expectations for him. If you check our Twitter, you'll see how how some reacted when he hit a single home run. Really, their only good hitters are Fletcher, Trout, and Ohtani.
And Rendon.
Yeah, I forgot about him. That's 4 good hitters, but 4 hitters is not enough to reliably win.
I'm going to agree.
Especially
I'm not
with
sure.
Adele not immediately taking to swing the bat very well.
Right. You gotta anticipate some rookie slump from a guy like Adele. That's going to happen to any rookies coming up. Not everyone turns into a stud right away. And I think that, just personally, I don't think between the bullpen and the depth after those top 4 guys you mentioned, Callie, I don't think that's an incredibly – I don't know if they may or may not sneak into the playoffs. I think if they sneak in, it'll be an early exit for them. But I don't look at the Angels and say, this team's ready now. I think it's getting there. I think once they figure out their starting pitching problems, this is a different story. But I think that there's still more questions than answers there. And I don't think what they have up front is good enough, especially in the bullpen, to kind of carry them through it. Diamondbacks, Nationals, any thoughts on any of these other teams too?
I'm worried about the Nationals just a little bit. I feel like you lose Anthony Rendon, sort of one of the premier players in all of baseball. And no offense to Asdrubal Cabrera, but you replaced him with Asdrubal Cabrera. No offense to Asdrubal. So you just lost a very major productive force in your offense. And in a league, in a division, where you could have high run scoring games. You have teams that don't always have those pitching staffs in the NL East, and even the AL East. You have the Orioles, you have the Marlins, you have the Blue Jays, who are still sort of iffy. And I'm worried that this start's going to hurt them more than any other team because they have to really get it together. Last season, it really took them till the very end to cement themselves as a contender. They don't have that kind of time this season. So can they really kick it in?
Yeah, especially with the type of teams they got to play, too.
Uh-huh.
So can they really kick it into gear by September? I'm not really sure about that anymore.
And their bullpen is still a weakness. Perhaps
Right.
even more so than last year with Doolittle struggling.
Yeah, I agree. I think that'll be an interesting team. I think it might be too early for a team like the Diamondbacks. I think, that NL West is so deep that it's almost hard to really have strong opinions. And we've lost Scott again.
Oh, no.
Oh, man. But we shall press on. I think based on just general thoughts here that I think we can all kind of say Christian Yelich and Scott's back. And that we don't have to worry too much about Christian Yelich. But Angels, Diamondbacks, Nationals, those will be three teams to really watch as teams that aren't getting off to the start we would typically think of for them, especially when you have a guy named Mike Trout in the center of your lineup. But let's move on to some of the storylines around the league. It is a little bit of story time now, folks. Everyone has brought their own story. Callie is smiling with glee, so you can lead it off with your story for the week.
Jay Cronenworth has a WRC plus above 200, and he's underperforming. He has an xWOBA of 510, but a regular WOBA of just 0.453. He's also an incredible defender. He has 2 DRS in just 61 innings at first base. His 50% hard hit rate is incredible. His average exit velocity of 90.9 miles per hour is incredible. And his BAT of 350 is very sustainable for someone who hits the ball incredibly hard and is an extremely fast runner. He's in the 95th percentile for sprint speed, and for context, Tatis is in the 96th percentile. He's pretty much just as fast as Tatis. He is also he also has very good bat-to-ball skills. He doesn't walk a lot, but that doesn't mean he doesn't have a good eye. He has a swinging strike rate of just 6.6% so far this season. When you look at the Padres offense, you look at Tatis, you look at Pham, you look at guys like Myers. But you must also look at Cronenworth this year. Plus he can pitch,
I'm a fan of the statement of, just because you don't have a high walk rate doesn't mean you don't have a good eye. I'm a fan of that statement. I think I got into an argument on Twitter the other day over that statement. I think I won't go into this too much because it's getting off topic too much, but I think walk rate has become a little too overvalued in that we assume that a low walk rate means this player is over-aggressive or does not have a good eye. And I think, Callie, you bring up a good point there that, you can have a good eye and just be a swing-happy hitter. You can see that first pitch fastball, and instead of taking it, you can swing at it. I think that's an interesting argument.
Absolutely.
I think it's something where, we can hear you again, Scott. Cool.
Yay.
I know. I don't know. I don't even.
I think it's a situation where, you got to look beyond just the walk rate. Obviously, walk rate, if you have a high walk rate, you have a good eye. It doesn't mean if you have a low walk rate, you don't have a good eye. That's something I can speak out and I can't say in 280 characters on Twitter. I will never be happy with the word count or the character count on Twitter, but I digress. Wisdom, Ilan, your story.
All right, so I'm going to talk about 2 players on the Rockies who have really sort of turned their trajectories around this season. Antonio Centella and Daniel Murphy. So, starting with Centella because I have more numbers about him. So he has increased his strikeouts for 9 innings by 1.92. He has lowered his home runs for 9 innings by 0.84. He has lowered his walk rate per 9 innings by 1.46. His FIP is 2.47 lower. He has increased his strikeout percentage by 6.3%, and his WOBA allowed, which was one of the worst last season, is 110 points less. So you have seen from this guy, who was one of the worst pitchers in baseball by many metrics last year, turn himself around to one of the best pitchers in baseball. I watched him pitch the other day, and seeing the shift in his pitches and seeing him more confident in what he throws is impressive, and it really reflects the Rockies as a whole this season. Turning around these pitchers who had originally had some expectations attached to them. Remember, Centella 2017 had some really good starts. They're turning them around and putting them in situations where they're actually dominating against legitimate teams. Same with Daniel Murphy. He came over in a pretty large deal, and one that was very controversial at the time. I remember I was kind of very upset about it. I thought it didn't make sense to sign someone of that age, that kind of contract. But this season, he has increased his WRC plus by 90, his WOBA by 116, and he has added 10.1% to his barrel percentage. So he is hitting the ball harder. He's hitting it for more runs.
I'm good.
So I am. That is one of the reasons why I'm most confident in the Rockies this season, is because there are these numbers backing up their statistics, and I can really sense a change in the way the Rockies run their team. They understood that 2019 was one of the worst seasons of history. Even though they didn't play as bad as some other seasons, the fact they came into that season with more expectation than I think ever before, and then they went out like that, really shook up many in the organization. As the offseason told us, we saw Arenado being very upset vocally about the team. We see that now they are trying to change, and they're trying to improve and become more of a modern baseball team, which is something they had been very reluctant to for years before this. So yeah, that's my little spiel about the Rockies and how they are genuinely impressive, and I hope that people in the media cover it more, because I don't see anyone talking about it besides like me.
If you don't know, now you know.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And I mean, when you start 11-3, you're going to get your name in the media eventually. It's coming.
Absolutely.
The MLB Twitter account posted something about that.
Yeah.
Best record in baseball just today.
Yeah, it's coming. And round it out, Scott, with your story for the week.
Well, now that I have like a working mic, let me just say, I'll come out and say it. The Nationals are not making the playoffs. Totally breaking going back to that. I'll just say it. I think they're horrible. I think it is the year 2020. We played baseball in a game of launch angles and 3 outcomes, and they have no home run hitters. Like their bullpen is abysmal. You can take that to the bank and deposit it. They are not making the playoffs. I'm etching that in stone. Yelich also he's whiff. He's in like the second percentile in strikeouts and whiffs, which is obviously ridiculous.
Not ideal
for a player of his caliber. So I'm not going to sit here and tell you he's going to stay horrible or be great, but definitely something to watch. My storyline is back to the Tigers, to no surprise to anyone. Gregory Soto on the bullpen. This is a team that has, even in our peak years, even in the 2011 to 2014 era of Tigers baseball that dominated the American League, that was the one thing we never had was a good bullpen. And that it was never addressed. We never developed anybody to be a reliever. And it clearly, coming out of that era with those rosters and coming out of that without a ring, is pretty blatantly obvious that is the biggest factor. And I will take that opinion to the grave. And this is now a team that Gregory Soto is this. I believe he's still rookie eligible. I think he only appeared in like 9 games last year. But we signed him at 18 in 2014, I want to say, out of the Dominican Republic. He was, when the Tigers had like the worst farm system in the history of the sport from like 2013 to 15. He was like our prize like prospect, and he was like not even in the top like 300, but he was like the only relatively decent one we had. And now he was a starter, and he got rocked in the minors pretty consistently, but kept getting older, so we just kept promoting him. And now he is 24, I believe, 23, 24, and we moved him to the bullpen and told him to just throw as hard as you can. And now he has very quickly turned into granted, it's like an 8-inning sample size, but so far this season, he is, bar none, one of the most dominant relievers in the entire sport. He's given up 1 hit so far this year in 7 appearances. His whip is 0.2. I think he only has 1 walk as well. He has yet to give up a run. Throws 100-mile-an-hour sinkers. He's literally, that's all he throws, really. He just throws 100-mile-an-hour sinkers that paint the corner. And to this point, nobody's figured out how to hit it. And he's also a lefty, and it's very refreshing coming from, like I said, watching and growing up with a team that was good at everything except the bullpen. Now it appears to be the exact opposite. So that is someone to keep an eye on. Again, like, if you don't know, now you know. Gregory Soto is probably the future, not only the future of the Tigers bullpen, but I think he's going to become a closer sooner rather than later and probably be one of the best relievers out there for a while.
Is he the one who struck out 9 batters in a row in his relief
No,
appearance?
so that was Tyler Alexander. Tyler Alexander is not good. I don't know how that happened. He is like K per 9 in the minors as a starter was like 5, and then this happened, and now we want to move to the rotation and stuff, and he's like never been good and isn't good. So that was like a total I mean, he tied the other American leaguer who has the record he tied with is Doug Fister, who did it in a Tigers uniform, who is notably known for being like a Rick Porcello, like not strikeout pitcher and like total ground ball and get you out. And for whatever reason, now the 2 people with the American League record are like 2 of the least likely to strike you out on the mound. It's fascinating.
And they're both Tigers.
Damn right, baby. Both Tigers.
Gotta love baseball.
Have to. What a crazy thing.
Yeah, gotta love baseball.
You talked about the American League strikeout record. What's his name? Did Rankin Johnson not strike out 9 in his appearance against the Yankees in the ALTS against
I think he did.
Yankees?
I think you're right. I'm pretty sure he is. It might have been 8. I don't know. So I know that he outright broke the record for consecutive strikeouts as a reliever and tied the record for American League's just period strikeouts straight. And there might be a few. It might not just be those 2. It might be a few people.
Johnson might not have counted since it was postseason and not regular season.
Maybe that too. I know that Tom Seaver has the overall record at 10 straight, and that's Tyler Alexander hit Mike Moustakas. He was going for the all-time record and beamed him, and then struck the next guy out. So
no.
Yeah.
Baseball is a crazy game, and unfortunately, because of the craziness, people sometimes get crazy on Twitter, and that's the story I'm going to go with for this week before we wrap it up with what we're going to watch for this week.
Crazy.
Sean Doolittle apparently deleted his Twitter account between the end of last night's game and the time we're recording this on Sunday afternoon. He was part of a blown 5-run 8th in which the Nationals ended up losing a game again last night. It was to the Baltimore Orioles. They were winning 3-0 going into the 8th. They lost 5-3. He was only one of 2 pitchers to pitch that inning. And apparently the harassment was so bad on Twitter, he felt he needed to delete his account. Speaks to the larger issue we all have with social media and being respectful of one another and recognizing these guys are athletes, but also human beings, just like all of us who have rough outings and make mistakes. And I don't know, it's frustrating for me to see some of the backlash. I mean, I make mistakes too. I am by no means perfect. But the backlash some of these guys get on Twitter or other forms of social media, and it's kind of pretty horrific at times and not something I think we necessarily need to delve into, but just your daily reminder to be kind to one another in times when when times are good, when times are bad. But we'll close the storybook, we'll turn on the TV, and talk about what we're going to watch for this week. Was that a good transition? If not, I'll never say it again. I thought it was
I
clever
think
in
it
my
was
head.
good.
I thought
liked
it was
it.
clever in my
Hey.
head.
Shoot or shoot. You got to try stuff. You know?
It sounded good in my head. I'm like, I'm going to try it. We'll see what everyone says. But we'll start with Scott. What are you watching for this week in Major League Baseball?
Obviously I'm going to watch the Tigers, but that's just like obvious. Quick little blip on them. I think that they split their season series with the Reds, who I believe are a competitive team. And outside of that Reds series, they have yet to play anyone even remotely talented. So I think part of this hot start might be attested to that. And as much as I give Laz crap, the White Sox are probably the most talented team they've played so far coming up. So I think this is the series where you step up or shut up, and you prove to people, if you're actually in this and trying to make a playoff push, you have to step up and probably take two from this series. So I think that's for anyone who's wondering if the Tigers' strong start is sustainable. I think this series is the perfect barometer, basically, to tell you if this is even remotely sustainable or not. But my biggest series is the A's Angels, and I think that is because the AL West outside of the A's is a disaster. Second place is 6-8. Like, I think that is a total train wreck of a division. And the fact that if the A's take 2 of 3 from the Angels, they're going to be 6-12. And I just think that for the outlook of just watch AL West baseball this week is basically what I'm saying. For the outlook of what that division is going to look like, and I mean, just who's going for second place right now is 2 games under 500. Like that a lot is going to be shaken up this week in that division. And I think that series in particular is going to be huge because, I mean, if the A's sweep the Angels, it's really hard to argue that they're going to be in a position to even get second place in that division. So I think those are by far my 2 biggest must watches for this week.
Adding on to what Scott said, the second place in the AL West could drop down to 6-9. The A's play the Astros later today. They have Jesus Luzardo on the mound, so good chance that the Astros drop to 6-9 on the season. Personally, I chose the upcoming 2-game series that the Indians have against the Cubs. It's going to be a very interesting pitching matchup, and who knows, maybe if the Indians pray to Jobu enough, their bats will wake up.
Ilan, what you got?
So
What's your story this week?
I was thinking about the Rockies, of course, because I do that a lot. And I was thinking about Kyle Freeland. I remember a couple weeks ago I was having a discussion with some people about Kyle Freeland's 2018 season being a fluke. And with the Rockies as a whole turning it around, Kyle Freeland has gotten better than last season, but I mean, that's kind of easy to do. He had one of the worst seasons I've seen in a very long time last season. So I'm really intrigued to see how he pitches against most likely Arizona. They haven't released their staff for that, but most likely play against Arizona. And seeing him try to return to the pitcher he was in 2018, the Cy Young Award contender, because if he makes it at least to a level somewhat near 2018, I think the Rockies become significantly scarier. With the top 3 of Gray, Marquez, and Freeland, I think we can really see something special there. So I think Kyle Freeland is a pitcher to watch next week, the week after that, and the week after that.
I forgot John Gray existed for a second, and when you said Gray, I thought, the Rockies traded for Sonny Gray?
Yeah, no doubt. I think the Rockies top three, if that ends up being John Gray, Germán Marquez, and Kyle Freeland, that's a tough top three to beat. For me, I'm going to watch who cools off first. The A's on their 8-game winning streak, Aaron Judge, and seemingly hitting every ball to the moon. Donovan Solano hitting like clearly over 400. I think it was up towards like 430 last I checked. Or Fernando Tatis, who is a human highlight reel the past couple days. Callie, you have been having fun with your favorite teams recently, haven't you?
I have.
All right, let's wrap it up with one quick prediction. Sunday Night Baseball tonight. We are recording in the afternoon, so we can predict this, and I can tell you how all wrong you are if you don't pick the White Sox. We have the Indians and the White Sox going tonight. Give me a quick score prediction and the winner. We'll start with Ilan.
Tough. I'm going to go with 3-1 Cleveland.
Callie?
2-0 Cleveland.
And Scott?
23-0. No. So I'm actually broadcasting this game. Check out the Diamond Digest hot mic. I'll be broadcasting this. I just love Shane Bieber, and so I'm gonna go. I'll go 4. No, man, this is really geez. 3-2 in extras. Book it.
Indians or Sox?
Oh, right. Cleveland.
All right. Well, you're all wrong. It's going to be 2-0 White Sox. Either starter is going to give up a run, though. I think any runs that are scored.
Hey, I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
I love
You
that
think
take.
the
That's
White
fun.
Sox can score off of James, however you pronounce his last name?
Karinchak? No, I don't think they're going to score off him. I think they're going to score off of somebody else. We're going to see what happens.
Also, Giolito's a fraud. I mean, that's
Of course, yeah.
You knew. I couldn't get through a whole hour without saying it. You knew.
Well, we'll put it on the national stage tonight, and we'll see what happens. But
Absolutely.
he hasn't gotten off to a great start, I'll be honest. But
But he's not facing a great hitting team.
yeah, he pitched well against the Indians last time out. I'm curious to see how his game plan changes this time around. Shane Bieber, I really don't think needs to change his game plan anytime soon.
Yeah, no, he looks. That's early Cy Young candidate right
That's
now.
Yeah.
a scary pitcher to face right now when someone is that.
Ohio's going to have a fun night. Ohio has Columbus playing Game 5 against Toronto in hockey, and then this and the national stage. I'm sure the good people of Ohio will be very, very stressed tonight.
But with that, we'll just wait until the next episode to talk some more baseball.
Absolutely.
Great to talk with all of you. Thanks to everyone listening. Make sure to check us out. Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. Twitter is primarily our place to go, @Diamond_Digest. You can find us at DiamondDigest.com, of course, where all of our fabulous writers are doing their thing. Got a lot of good content coming out every week. Your favorite team is going to be on there. We've got everyone covering everyone. It's fantastic coverage. But that's going to do it for us this week. We'll talk to you next week. For Ilan, Callie Tsai, and Scott Bentley, this is Jordan Lazowski signing off. Take care, everyone. Have a great week, and we'll talk to you next week.